Mercury, synthetic dyes, and antibiotic residues from industrial fish farms, all found in canned salmon brands Americans have trusted for generations. But open the wrong can, and what you're eating is farm-raised fish dyed pink with colorants, treated with pesticides, and packed in BPA-lined cans by companies convicted of price fixing. If you've been buying the same brand for 10, 20, 30 years, it's all been going into your body. I'm counting down 10 to throw out and 8 that earned your trust, based on ConsumerLab testing, Oceana's DNA studies, and federal lawsuits. Starting with the cheapest can on the shelf. Number 10. Aldi Sea Queen Pink Salmon. Aldi's store brand salmon is cheap. At first glance, the price tag looks like a win. Sea Queen Pink Salmon usually runs about $2 a can, making it one of the most affordable options on the shelf. The problem is where that fish comes from. In 2021, the nonprofit Toxin Free USA filed a lawsuit against Aldi, alleging the company was marketing farmed salmon with sustainability labels when the fish actually came from industrial fish farms in Chile. Chilean salmon farms have been under scrutiny for years. Environmental groups have documented widespread use of antibiotics, synthetic pesticides, and fungicides in Chilean aquaculture operations. The farms pen fish in overcrowded ocean cages where disease spreads fast and waste pours directly into the surrounding water. Aldi eventually changed its labeling and the lawsuit was dismissed. But the underlying issue didn't go away. When a brand slaps a sustainability seal on farmed salmon raised in conditions that environmental organizations call destructive, that label is doing marketing work, not quality work. For your $2, you're getting fish from one of the most controversial farming systems in the world. You deserve to know that before you open the can. And this next brand managed to do even worse in a blind taste test. Number 9. Stop & Shop Store Brand. Stop & Shop is a solid grocery chain. Their store brand has won blind comparisons for things like pumpkin pie and generally holds its own against the national names. Their canned salmon, though, is a completely different story. In a 2026 Chowhound blind taste test comparing 7 major canned salmon brands, Stop & Shop Pink Salmon finished dead last. The reviewer described a strong fishy smell, dry and stodgy texture, and a bitter aftertaste that crept in about one bite in and stayed there. For a product packed in oil, the fact that it managed to taste dry is something of an accomplishment. The flavor started bland and then got noticeably worse. That bitterness at the back end is a telltale sign of fish that's been processed without enough care or has sat on the shelf longer than it should. The texture was clumpy in a way that made chewing feel like a chore. When the best thing you can say about a can of salmon is that it technically contains salmon, that's not a passing grade. This one failed on every single measure the tester was rating for. Flavor, texture, smell, aftertaste. If this can is in your pantry, move it along. The next brand sells a lot more cans, but that doesn't make it any better. Number 8. Great Value. Walmart's house brand. Great Value is Walmart's store brand, and they sell a lot of canned salmon, millions of cans a year. The price is usually somewhere between $2 and $3, which makes it an easy grab when you're loading up on pantry staples. But there's a reason it's cheap, bub. Great Value doesn't tell you much about where the fish comes from. The labeling is vague. You'll see pink salmon on the front and not a lot else. You won't find a specific fishery, a harvest region, any third-party testing results, or a sustainability certification. In a market where the better brands are printing the name of the Alaskan bay where their fish was caught, Great Value gives you the bare minimum required by law and stops there. That matters, because Oceana's salmon study found that fish sold with vague or generic labeling was far more likely to be mislabeled than salmon identified by specific species and origin. About 1 in 4 samples labeled simply as wild turned out to be something else entirely. Often farmed Atlantic salmon dyed to look like the real thing. When a company doesn't volunteer details about what's in the can, it's usually not because they forgot. At that price, something has to give. And that something is usually the fish. Number 7. Libby's Pink Salmon. Libby's has been a pantry name since the 1860s. Your grandmother probably knew the brand from their corned beef and canned vegetables. The salmon, though, is a different product from a different era. Libby's Pink Salmon is one of those brands that's been coasting on name recognition for decades. Open the can, and you'll find a lot of liquid, chunks of fish with skin and bone, and a flavor that most reviewers describe as bland at best. The sourcing is not specific. The can says pink salmon, and the origin line reads product of USA without telling you much more than that. There's no named fishery, no specific region, and no species identification beyond the word pink. For a brand with over 150 years of history, you'd expect more transparency, not less. And here's the issue. When Libby's was your grandmother's brand, There was really only one kind of salmon going into American cans, and it came from Alaskan waters. Today, the supply chain is a lot more complicated, and a label that doesn't specify where the fish was caught is doing you no favors. Nostalgia is not a sourcing standard, and the next brand on this list has an even longer history of falling short. If you're finding this useful, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Most of the people watching this channel haven't subscribed yet, and it helps more than you'd think. Number 6. Double Q Pink Salmon. Double Q is one of those brands you see in the canned fish aisle and figure somebody must be buying. And they are. Double Q is manufactured by Peter Pan Seafood, a company that's been processing fish in Alaska since 1899. So you'd think the pedigree would carry it. The problem isn't necessarily where the fish starts. It's what happens after it gets into the can. Double Q is a budget brand, and it shows. The processing produces a product that's watery, soft, and often has more bone and skin than you'd expect in a modern canned product. Reviewers consistently flag the metallic aftertaste and mushy texture. There's no third-party Mercury testing that the company advertises, no BPA-free can lining declaration on the packaging, and no sustainability certification on the label. In 2025, ConsumerLab tested 22 canned fish products across multiple brands, and the brands that scored highest were the ones that invested in independent verification. Double Q doesn't appear on those lists. A century-old heritage means nothing if the product in the can doesn't reflect it. This is a brand running on history, while the standards have moved on without it. But at least Double Q can say it was never convicted of a federal crime. The next 3 brands can't. Number 5. Honey Boy. Honey Boy is another heritage name in the canned salmon world. The brand has been around since the early 1900s and sells primarily pink and red salmon. Honey Boy is now owned by Trident Seafoods, headquartered in Seattle, one of the largest seafood companies in North America. And that's where the conversation gets interesting. Trident processes an enormous volume of fish every year. Their scale is part of the value proposition. They can sell salmon cans at a competitive price because they move a massive amount of product, but scale also means less attention at the individual can level. Honey Boy doesn't advertise third-party Mercury testing. The cans don't carry BPA-free lining claims, and the labeling, while technically accurate, gives you the minimum. You'll see pink salmon or red salmon and the country of origin. That's about it. No named bay, no catch method, no independent certification. For a company the size of Trident, the resources to test and certify are absolutely there. They just chose not to spend them on this particular brand. When a company can afford transparency and decides not to provide it, that's a decision worth noticing. But Honey Boy is a minor concern compared to the 3 companies that actually broke the law. Number 4. Chicken of the Sea. Chicken of the Sea has been selling canned seafood since 1930. The company is now owned by Thai Union Group, a multinational corporation based in Thailand with annual revenues north of $4 billion. In a 2023 tasting table comparison of 13 canned salmon brands, Chicken of the Sea ranked near the bottom. The texture was described as grainy and soggy, the color more gray than pink, and the flavor so mild that one reviewer said it was difficult to distinguish from the company's canned tuna. That is not a compliment. But the quality issues are almost beside the point because the real story is what happened behind closed doors. From 2011 to at least 2013, Chicken of the Sea conspired with StarKist and Bumblebee to fix the prices of canned seafood sold across America. Chicken of the Sea ended up as the whistleblower in the scheme, cooperating with the Department of Justice to avoid prosecution. Their parent company, Thai Union, had tried to buy Bumblebee for $1.5 billion in 2015. And that acquisition attempt is what blew the whole operation wide open. The company avoided criminal charges. But American consumers were the ones who paid inflated prices for years, while these 3 companies coordinated behind their backs. Cooperating with prosecutors afterward doesn't erase that. Number 3. StarKist. StarKist is one of the most recognized names in canned seafood. Charlie the Tuna has been their mascot since 1961. The company is now owned by Dongwon Industries, a South Korean conglomerate. And in 2018, StarKist pleaded guilty to a felony charge of price fixing for conspiring to raise the prices of canned tuna and seafood products between 2011 and 2013. A federal judge ordered them to pay a $100 million fine. That was the maximum penalty allowed by law. That's not a rounding error. That's what happens when a company treats its customers as marks. In 2024, StarKist and its parent companies agreed to pay over $200 million more in civil settlements to retailers and consumers who were overcharged during the conspiracy. StarKist's canned salmon is produced from fish caught and processed in multiple countries, and their website doesn't make it easy to trace where a specific can came from. In reviews, the salmon has been described as very salty with a lingering metallic aftertaste. For a company that conspired to overcharge you for years and was caught doing it, asking for your trust on the salmon aisle takes a certain kind of nerve. But one company managed to outdo even StarKist. Number 2. Bumblebee. Bumblebee has been selling canned fish since 1899. They were one of the original salmon canners in America, and they've spent the last decade proving that heritage and honesty are two different things. In 2017, Bumblebee pleaded guilty to a felony price-fixing charge and was fined $25 million by the Department of Justice. Their CEO, Christopher Leshowski, was later found guilty by a jury in San Francisco and sentenced to 40 months in federal prison. In 2019, the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy and was sold to a Taiwanese company for $925 million. But that's only half the story. A 2017 class action lawsuit in California federal court accused Bumblebee of selling farm-raised Chilean salmon as premium wild-caught product. According to the lawsuit, the fish was penned in ocean cages off the coast of Chile, exposed to fecal matter, fungicides, and antibiotics, and then dyed with synthetic colorants to fake the pink color of wild salmon. Bumblebee settled the suit in 2018 and agreed to change its packaging. Then in February 2026, another class action hit the company alleging its certified sustainable seafood label was false. A company that will dye farm-raised fish to look wild and then call it premium is not a company that respects you. Number 1. Pink Beauty. Pink Beauty sounds like exactly the kind of wholesome, old-fashioned brand your grandmother would trust. That's the point. The packaging is simple, the name is warm, and the price is low. And almost everything about it is designed to make you stop asking questions. Pink Beauty is a budget brand with minimal labeling. The can tells you it contains pink salmon. It doesn't tell you where the fish was caught, how it was processed, or whether anyone tested it for mercury or heavy metals. There's no sustainability certification, no BPA-free declaration, and no species identification beyond the word pink. In a market where Oceana studies found that nearly half of salmon samples collected were mislabeled, and where ConsumerLab testing revealed significant variation in omega-3 content and contaminant levels across brands, buying a can that volunteers nothing is a roll of the dice with your dinner. The absence of information is information. Companies that invest in quality are eager to tell you about it. Companies that don't invest in quality prefer silence. Pink Beauty is the quietest brand on the shelf. And in this industry, quiet is the biggest red flag of all. That brings us to the 8 brands that actually earned your trust. The trust list. Number 8. Kirkland Signature Wild Alaska. Pink Salmon. Costco's Kirkland brand gets a lot of things right, and their canned salmon is one of them. Kirkland Signature Wild Alaska. Pink salmon is sourced from Alaskan waters, wild-caught, and packed with skin and bones for extra calcium. In ConsumerLab's 2025 testing of 22 canned fish products, Kirkland's pink salmon came through clean. No mercury problems, no arsenic concerns, and a solid omega-3 content that puts it in the upper tier of the products tested. For a can that usually costs between $6 and $8 for a 2-pack at Costco, that's strong value for what you're getting. Now, you might remember hearing that Costco had a Kirkland Signature smoked salmon recall in late 2024 for listeria. That recall was elevated to the FDA's highest warning level, Class 1, in January 2025. But that was smoked salmon, a completely different product packed by a completely different supplier, Acme Smoked Fish Corporation out of Brooklyn. The canned wild pink salmon is a separate product with a separate supply chain and a separate track record. Don't let the smoked salmon headlines scare you away from the canned variety. They earned their spots on opposite sides of this list. The next brand scored just as well in testing, but at a smaller store. Number 7. Trader Joe's Wild Sockeye Salmon. Trader Joe's has built a loyal following by offering quality products at fair prices without a lot of noise. Their wild sockeye salmon is no exception. It's wild-caught Alaskan sockeye, packed in its own juices with a deep red color and a clean, rich flavor that reviewers consistently rank near the top of any comparison. In ConsumerLab's testing, Trader Joe's sockeye salmon showed no problems with mercury or arsenic contamination and delivered a healthy amount of omega-3 fatty acids per serving. The sockeye species is the gold standard for canned salmon. Sockeye feed on krill and plankton in open water, which gives the flesh its natural deep red color without any dyes or additives. No synthetic colorants needed. When you open a can of Trader Joe's sockeye, What you see is what the fish actually looked like in the water. That's a bigger deal than it sounds, because several of the brands on the avoid list were literally dyeing their farm-raised fish to fake that very color. At around $3 to $4 a can, Trader Joe's delivers the real thing at a fair price. The only downside is that you need a Trader Joe's nearby, and not every town has one. The next two brands have been earning trust since before most of us were born. Number 6. Pillar Rock. Red Sockeye Salmon. Pillar Rock has been packing salmon since 1896. Unlike a lot of heritage brands that have changed hands and cut corners over the decades, Pillar Rock has stayed focused on one thing: wild red sockeye salmon from Alaska. The brand is now part of Ocean Beauty Seafoods, one of the older seafood companies in the Pacific Northwest. What makes Pillar Rock stand out is consistency. Open the can, and you'll find firm, deep red flesh with a rich flavor that tastes like actual salmon, not like whatever filler or liquid some of the budget brands pack around a few flakes of fish. The sourcing is specific. Wild Alaskan sockeye, caught in waters that are among the most strictly managed fisheries in the world. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game monitors salmon runs down to the individual river system, counting the fish that return each season and adjusting catch limits accordingly. That level of oversight means the fish in your can was part of a sustainable harvest, not an afterthought from an overcrowded ocean pen. Pillar Rock isn't flashy. It doesn't market itself with environmental buzzwords or wellness trends. It puts good salmon in a can and has been doing it for over 120 years. Sometimes the most boring brand on the shelf is the one doing the best work. Number 5. Rubenstein's Red Salmon. Rubenstein's is the other old guard sockeye brand, and it might be even more familiar to the over 50 crowd than Pillar Rock. For decades, Rubenstein's was the salmon your mother reached for when she made salmon croquettes on a Friday evening. The brand has been packing wild Alaska sockeye since the early 1900s and has changed remarkably little in that time. Open a can of Rubenstein's and you'll find the whole fish, skin, and bones included in dense, rich, red flesh that holds together when you fork it out. The bones are soft and fully edible, and they're one of the richest sources of calcium you'll find in any canned product. One serving can deliver more calcium than a glass of milk. If your grandmother trusted this brand, she had good instincts. The fish inside the can hasn't changed, even if the grocery aisle around it has. Number 4. Bear and Wolf. Bear and Wolf is a name you probably haven't seen at your regular grocery store, and that's actually part of what makes it worth knowing. It's a small batch brand that sources its salmon from Bristol Bay, Alaska, which is home to the largest wild sockeye salmon run on Earth. Every summer, tens of millions of sockeye return to Bristol Bay's rivers to spawn, and the fishery has been sustainably managed for generations. Bear and Wolf works directly with Alaskan fishing families, cutting out the layers of middlemen and distributors that the larger brands rely on. That direct relationship means the fish goes from the water to the can faster, with fewer stops and less handling along the way. The result is a noticeably different product. The flesh is firm, the color is vibrant, and the flavor is clean in a way that makes the budget brands taste processed by comparison. The company is upfront about its sourcing. Small runs, specific harvest locations, minimal processing. They tell you where the fish was caught, who caught it, and how it got into the can. In a market dominated by multinational corporations that won't tell you which ocean their salmon came from, that kind of openness is worth paying attention to. And the next brand takes transparency even further. Number 3. Vital Choice. Vital Choice was founded in 2001 by Randy Hartnell, a former Alaskan commercial fisherman who spent 25 years working those waters before starting the company. That's about as close to a from-the-source pedigree as you're going to find in this industry. Vital Choice sells wild Alaskan salmon, both canned and frozen, sourced from specific Alaskan fisheries. Their canned sockeye is packed in BPA-free cans with no added liquid, which means when you open it, you're getting fish. Not water, not broth, not oil, just salmon and its own natural juices. Vital Choice tests for heavy metals, PCBs, and other contaminants and publishes the results. Their omega-3 levels are among the highest you'll find in any canned salmon on the market. Health professionals and nutritionists have specifically recommended Vital Choice for its low contaminant profile and high nutrient density. A 6-ounce can of Vital Choice sockeye will run you about $7 to $9. And that's more than the supermarket brands. But when you compare what's inside that can to what's inside a $3 can from a company that pleaded guilty to federal price fixing, the math starts to look very different. The next brand tests every single fish. Number 2. Safe Catch. Safe Catch does something that almost no other canned seafood brand does. They test every single fish for mercury before it goes into a can. Not a batch test, not a quarterly sample. Every individual fish. The company was founded by Sean Wittenberg, who developed a proprietary testing technology that screens each fish for mercury levels. Their internal standard is 10 times stricter than the FDA's action limit of 1 part per million. For salmon, mercury is less of a concern than it is for tuna, since salmon naturally contains very low levels of the metal. But the fact that Safe Catch tests anyway tells you something important about how this company thinks. They would rather over-verify than under-deliver. Their wild Pacific pink salmon was selected as a ConsumerLab top pick in 2025, passing all quality checks with no contamination issues and delivering strong omega-3 content. The salmon is wild-caught, packed in BPA-free cans, and contains no added salt or liquid. What you get when you open the can is just fish. Nothing to drain, nothing to pour off. In a market full of brands that treat transparency as optional, Safe Catch built an entire business around making it mandatory, and the brand that earned the top spot did the same. Number 1. Wild Planet. Wild Planet earns the top spot for a reason. Founded in 2004 and based in McKinleyville, California, the company was built from the ground up around two things: sustainability and quality. Every Wild Planet salmon product is wild-caught in Alaskan waters by small-scale fishing families using methods that target specific species and reduce bycatch. The fish is hand-filleted and canned fresh, never frozen, without added water, oil, or fillers. Their mercury levels average 0.013 parts per million for pink salmon, which is more than 70 times lower than the FDA's action limit. ConsumerLab tested Wild Planet products and found no issues with mercury, arsenic, or any other contaminant, while confirming strong omega-3 fatty acid levels per serving. The cans are BPA-free, the products are non-GMO verified and kosher certified, and the company holds Marine Stewardship Council certification for sustainable sourcing. Their practices have earned endorsements from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch program. A 6-ounce can runs about $4 to $5. For wild Alaskan salmon that's been independently tested, properly certified, and packed with nothing but care and sea salt, that is not expensive. That is what fish is supposed to cost when someone handles it right. Next time you're in the canned fish aisle, flip the can over. If it doesn't tell you where the salmon was caught, how it was caught, and who tested it, put it back. Your grandmother deserved better, and so do you. If you want to know which canned tuna brands failed even worse, that video is right here.